Welcome on in Ashwings. It is time to do a little bit of holiday shopping. That's right. It is the holidays here in the States, and usually all around the world tend to celebrate something around this time. And I did want to go ahead and give a little bit of insight as to a maybe shopping guide that you can look into and how to even best grow your own collection in Flesh and Blood by taking a look at the singles that are currently on the market at this very moment. These are cards that you might not need, but when it comes down to hype for the set, since Flesh and Blood is run in a very player-driven market, it might be great to pick these up if you have not already. Let's go ahead and dive into the holiday singles buying guide that I'll go ahead and go over with you today here on Ashen Wings TCG. Welcome on in, everyone. I hope you are having a fantastic day. It's time to take a look at some singles. That's right, there are hot singles in your area, and I mean that with full intent, because let's just take a look at this, right? For those of you who don't know about Flesh and Blood, whether you're brand new to the game or you're just kind of starting and you're not really sure where to get all of your good cards or where to start shopping for things, first, I always suggest looking locally before even looking at this website of TCG Player. But locally is a very great place to start. Go to your LGS, talk amongst your fellow players, and you should be able to find some pretty great deals on some stuff here. But something I wanted to go about talking over is just the overall change that Flesh and Blood can go through depending on the set that comes out and depending on what heroes are currently in the meta. So at this very moment, a lot of the Part the Mistveil heroes are currently, actually all of them, all of the Part the Mistveil heroes are in the top portion of the meta at this very moment for Classic Constructed. And therefore, those cards are incredibly sought after simply because, well, they're the ones winning their armories, they're the ones winning Pro Quests and Road to Nationals, and so when you take a look at those, most players who are brand new to the game will want to play those winning decks. They'll come in and they'll just go, okay, I'm just going to buy up everything that's the equivalent of a top winning deck, of a top 8 deck, and then kind of take it from there. But what players don't know is the amount of sheer value you can get just by scrolling through the Majestic section of TCG Player and looking for those cards that may have been left on the wayside. And this is important because as the game continues to change, you're going to see certain cards gain and lose value based on the hype in which they are played. You know, we've seen cards go from 50 cents to $3. We've seen cards go from $5 to $65, all because they become cards that are staples in certain decks based on the meta that is currently happening in the Classic Constructed format specifically. Blitz format, we don't normally see a whole lot of change there, and obviously commons in Commoner, we don't have to worry about those ever shifting in price outside of maybe cold foils. But in this specific scenario, what I wanted to do is give you an idea about how you can start getting your Flesh and Blood collection rolling, your own armory, so to speak, in regards to getting a bunch of Majestics and Legendaries for an incredibly cheap price. The first thing I like to do is obviously just go to TCG Player. You can go ahead and you can click on the, if you go here, click on Shop All, it'll show you everything in Flesh and Blood. And then you can also just find Majestic here under the rarity. Click on that rarity, and then you'll be set to go here. You can even add in things like super rares if you really want to, because super rares are, they were shifted up to Majestic. So they are, in fact, Majestics in a way. And this is just going to kind of be a way for you to take a look at some of these cards in case you don't have them, right? Assuming you've started your game and you bought an armory deck and you're just trying to like build your own collection. Doing stuff like this is going to be incredibly important for you. So let's take a quick look at some of the cards that might never see play currently, but at some point in the future, they very well could have their own very powerful maneuvers, such as a card like Bonehead Barrier, right? This card is a 1-cost brute instant that says roll a 6-sided die, prevent the next X damage that would be dealt to your hero this turn, where X is the number rolled. Now, in most cases, that card would probably never see play. I don't think I've ever seen a brute deck with that card in it, but the card is currently 5 cents. 5 cents for a card that, if at any point Brutes rolling dice and preventing damage becomes an incredibly powerful thing in the future of Flesh and Blood, Bonehead Barrier is going to be the card you're going to want to pick up. And especially at 5 cents. These are one of those deals where even if you end up buying 3 of them, you're not going to feel bad because they're probably never going to be lower in price compared to this. Also, not to mention the fact that they were first printed in Welcome to Wraith, and I don't believe they got a reprint in the History Pack Volume 1. So this is currently the only printing they've got, and it's from Welcome to Wraith. It hasn't gotten a reprint. This is only going to come in rainbow foil from the WTR unless and it's going to be in rainbow foil, either alpha or whatever. And Bonehead Barrier, it's a great place to start. I think it is really I'm not defending that the card is actually good, but more specifically that this is a place for you to start to get your collection rolling. The same thing can go with Savage Beatdown. Now, obviously, if you purchase a KO Armory deck, you get 3 of these with the deck itself. So it's a great pickup because you already have them, right? And then you can just keep them for when, in case this card becomes insanely powerful in the meta for Brutes. But what I did want to also mention is when you're looking at this list, you take a look at something like Sedation Shot. Now, I'm not sure why on TCG Player Sedation Shot is considered a Majestic, but it is not. You'll see down here, it's got a gray C. That stands for common. And this is a common card. So this is not a Majestic. I don't suggest picking this up for a Majestic price. You can find this in a bulk bin. Shoot, I will send some to you if you need them. But that is pretty much the case here for this. And then you just take a look at some of the cards that normally don't see play, right? You take a look at something like Dimensional Crossroads. This card doesn't see any play, and currently Shadow Runeblades are kind of going on the up and up with Vincent kind of taking the reins of a few places here, but Dimensional Crossroads doesn't quite do as much there. But if this effect as a Majestic ends up becoming way more powerful in the future, you know that you picked up 3 copies of it for 9 cents. Shoot, you can even go about trying to find a first edition rainbow foil version of it, and that is only $1. It's $1 for the most rare version of this card that you can get, and you can just keep those on the back end. If you're trying to sell these, if this card ends up becoming some insanely powerful Runeblade card, the Shadow Runeblade card, then this might be something to look into when you are looking to sell some stuff, right? You can buy 6 copies of this card right now at $1. And then whenever this card ends up becoming insanely powerful, you can just sell those 6 copies for, probably like 10 times their price, if I were to guess, especially since they'll be the first edition rainbow foil versions of them. So that's just something to think about there. And then you also have several other cards that, again, won't see play. Forged for War, Ice Storm, which is specifically Ice and Lightning Fusion, and it's a Elemental Ranger. Currently, there are no Elemental Rangers in the CC meta as of this very moment, so this card's probably not going to be seeing play for a while, but it is a card that you can use in the Living Legend format if you wanted to use that too. There's just a whole bunch of different variety. All of these cards that are this price right now, if they end up seeing any kind of popularity in Classic Constructed, their price is going to skyrocket because people are going to start buying them out, and it's just going to completely flip this market on its head. You've got several other things here. Flood of Force, apparently 25 cents. Frightmare at 15 cents. Enigma is just the hero at 20 cents. I mean, you don't have to buy play sets of that. This would probably be the one thing I would stay away from, is buying the heroes unless you're looking to play said hero. But outside of that, you have cards like Diabolic Ultimatum, Soul Food, Rolling Thunder, Silverwind Shuriken. You've got Alpha Rampages, a Rhinar specialization that's pretty much run in every single version of Rhinar for 20 cents a piece. And then we could take a further look. Even more and more Majestics are going to be completely and utterly available at the very moment. Dimensional Vortex. You've got things like Dabble in Darkness, Skull Crushers, a Majestic equipment from Everfest, 20 cents. You've got things like Deep-Rooted Evil, Dig Up Dinner, Ready to Roll, Freezing Point. Not every one of these cards are going to be useful in the meta right now whenever you're purchasing them. But because of the player-driven market that we have, eventually when we come back to, give support to certain classes, or even a new class is created altogether that might be able to use some of the more generic cards, these are going to be great to just have 3 copies of, so you don't have to worry about buying hype prices, right? Hype pricing is exactly what removes a lot of the fun from getting into a new hero. Let's say a new Light Warrior comes out, right? If a new Light Warrior comes out and you go, dang, I really wish I picked up all of the cool Light Warrior attack reactions and attack actions that are in that class and talent, because Boltyn is currently not a contender in the meta right now, it's incredibly important to make sure you're on top of that. Flesh and Blood, matter of fact, there was just a spoiler that came out, Warcry of Bologna, that is a Light Warrior attack reaction card that's incredibly powerful into the current meta and into any further meta that's going to be able to block out some damage retroactively on the defense, and then also present a lot more damage on the offense. It's a card that, it's part of the expansion slot in the Hunted, so it's not going to be a card that is readily opened all the time, but if this card ends up bringing Boltyn to a significantly higher plane of playability, simply due to the fact that you have more offensive and defensive capabilities, well, guess what? Now, Boltyn all of a sudden becomes like the nastiest hero to play. And that's what you expect to see. With the meta changing so frequently, and players being the ones that really drive the prices of the cards, because players want to be the best versions of themselves, and in doing so want to just net deck a whole bunch of things they find online, in situations like this that are pretty good. I mean, Raiden Duskbane, speaking of Boltyn, Raiden Duskbane, 13-cent card, obviously, because you can get them within the Boltyn structure deck. But if you take a look at the first ed cold foil version of Raiden, $43. You could have a cold foil version of your weapon for $43. You probably couldn't do that with many other weapons, but it's nice to see that just you have the options here. So this is something I suggest doing, is at least picking up a playset of every copy of Majestic that you can find on the TCG player here, right? Just take a look at them, and then the second it starts getting to like $5 maybe, then you can hold back, right? Because then a playset's about $15, and that's a little bit. But let's go ahead and just take a look how far we have to go before we start hitting things like $5, right? We're on page 7 right now, still under $1 for a lot of these cards. Still going through. A lot of Majestics just do not end up seeing a regular amount of play. Something else to note is different types of cards. So for instance, any of the axe builds of cards, right? If there's a card that says like, it's a warrior action that says give target axe weapon plus whatever. Currently, axes are not a big thing in Warrior, and Warrior is not very big into most things. So playing that is not going to be as popular. But the second it is, those cards are going to skyrocket. You're going to see things like Shatter, Spillblood. All these cards go for a lot of money, right? Spillblood, $1 already. And take a look at all these other cards that we've gotten to. We're on page 13 of this entire Majestic list, and we're still seeing Majestics at under $1. All of these cards that you see, especially things like Burn Them All, Splatter Skull, this was a recent card. This is a recent card that came out of Rosetta, is Splatter Skull. This card is an expansion slot card. That's another thing to take a look at, is whether or not they're expansion slot cards. Expansion slot card Majestics are going to be even harder to find as the years go on, and more people stop opening up current product. And therefore, Splatter Skulls are going to go for a lot if this ends up being something that's like really powerful here. Take a look at the Rainbow Foil, it's only $2.50. That's a steal. Not to mention, let's go ahead and just take a look, right? We're already here, right? We're at $1. We're about halfway through the pages. So you'd probably assume most of the Majestics that are going to be worth any kind of money, yes, they're going to be expensive versions of themselves, but in most cases, you even take a look, probably just on page 5 of the most expensive ones. Yeah, $9, $10, a little bit less. Like, you still have most of this list of cards. Here you go. Start going to $4, $7. The rest of this is very affordable Majestics for you to play in your deck. But we don't just want to look at Majestics. Let's also go ahead and take a look at Legendaries. So Legendaries are usually pieces of equipment, but sometimes they can be cards that are put within your deck. And Legendaries are really important because in some cases they help build your overall playstyle with your hero. Now, this again changes with the meta. Some cards do really, really well during some metas and some do poorly. And whenever you see these legendaries that are cheap in their cost, in their price, in most cases, they're extended art cold foil or they're just regular cold foil versions of themselves tend to be really reasonable to purchase as well. Let's go ahead and again, this is outing me as somewhat of a Bolton enjoyer. But let's take a look at Warband of Bologna, right? $13 for a rainbow foil. For a legendary headpiece, Temper 2. So you can only use it in Bolton right now because it's the only light warrior. But if you look up Warband of Bologna in this extended art cold foil version, you have it at $47. It's a pretty reasonable price for a legendary piece of equipment. So, and especially in the rarest version of this card, right? If you're talking about from a collector standpoint, Warband of Bologna from an extended art, not only was this a expansion slot card, but it also came in this extended art and the regular rainbow foil. So it's even harder to find this card in this treatment compared to any of the other legendaries within Bright Lights. So picking it up for $50 is a pretty solid steal if you're looking to do a full collection of cards, or at least just trying to, pimp out your Bolton deck effectively. But if you take a look at all of these legendaries that are incredibly affordable, Teklo Foundry Heart, still very cheap. I know Dash got a bit of a debuff with High Octane being banned, but Teklo Foundry Heart at $20, this was not this way 2 years ago. This card was not this much 2 years ago, especially since it's the rainbow foil from Arcane Rising. So you're getting the old rainbow foil version of it, and I could only assume the cold foil is worth significantly more, but thousands probably, if I were to guess. Yeah, 1,400, but that's a different story. That's obviously because it's Arcane Rising and not because it's anything different there. So go on. Let's go back. There we go. So again, we're back here. We're taking a look. More of these legendaries, super affordable. Meridian Pathway, necessary for one of the most powerful decks in the format right now, being Enigma. Crown of Seeds, if you're big into the Living Legend format, Crown of Seeds is really important if you're playing Starvo. And Crown of Seeds is banned in Classic Constructed, but it's not banned in Starvo. And Starvo just won the Living Legend Calling out in Chicago. So it's a powerful card to have. Trench, super good for Rangers in regards to being able to pretty much prevent any CNC effects and just go, okay, cool, I'm going to just get rid of my arsenal, put it back in my deck, and then I'll draw a card, and then we'll worry about that later. And you get a resource out of it, which is great. Ghostly Touch, in case you end up needing to do some really big, nasty, phantasmless damage towards the end of the game. Ghostly Touch is a great fatigue move there. Redback Shroud, Assassin's getting a whole bunch of support in the next set. It's $12 for Redback Shroud. Is this going to be the best chess piece for Assassin? Maybe not, but it's a legendary piece, and it's for Assassin. If it ends up becoming a thing where this is going to change the overall value of your attack reactions, Redback Shroud's going to be a good thing to pick up. This is just one of those things. You take a look, there's only 5 pages here of legendaries, but I'd say any legendary under $50 should be picked up, right? Levia, if you've ever been big into trying out Levia, just getting the regular non-foil version of it comes in for $30. 12 Petal Kasaya, the extended art version of it, is going for $27. Because guess what? 12 Petal Kasaya, even though it's in Zen, one of the most powerful decks in Classic Constructed and probably Living Legend at this moment, it is still going for $27. This is insane to me to think of this. Like, the fact this is going for this low blows my mind. And it's really just because it's only able to be used in one hero. And more specifically, the price of this is going down now because Zen is almost at its living legend status, which means that soon Zen won't be able to be played in Classic Constructed. And that is going to be something where people are going to want to give these up so they can buy into the new hero and play something different. The same goes for things like Barkskin Millennium Tree, a new legendary piece from Rosetta that is seeing a lot of play in the new Jarl deck, and it's seeing a lot of play in CC with either Starvo or with Jarl or with Oldhim. Also great stuff there. Vambrace of Determination is a great counter towards Enigma, so you're seeing some changes there. Scowling Fleshbag, $35 for this Brute headpiece, so if you're a Brute main, this is pretty much necessary for your build, so you're going to want that. So effectively what I'm saying here is that like you should take a look at these cards and you should see that. So any legendary under $50, I suggest picking up as quickly as possible. If you can afford the cold foil version of it, the extended art cold foil or just a regular cold foil version of the card, go with that. Go buy that card instead. It might cost you a little bit more, but it is the most rare version of the card. So that way, in case that card spikes in value in the future, or more specifically, maybe you're just looking to complete a set or sell off your collection, you at least have the most expensive version of the card to be in your possession, as opposed to buying all of the cheaper versions of the cards that, you know, you just needed to get by. If it's a cheap cold foil, pick it up. If it's not a cheap cold foil, buy the regular one, right? Because there's no reason to spend anything more if $50 is your budget for a legendary card. But finally, before we wrap this up and get into this, I know this is for budget gamers, right? New players, not new the hero, but new as in they are new to the game, as well as even veteran players who might be looking to switch heroes in the future or something of the sort just to kind of like build up their own collection. The next thing that we need to talk about is 3 cards that I suggest picking up if it's the only card that you can buy during this holiday season. If it's the only card you can buy, I suggest picking these up for yourself. This next one, a little bit inexpensive compared to the other 2, but this next one is Enlightened Strike. So Enlightened Strike, it's a generic attack that is pretty powerful in most decks. Just about any deck you can think of that has that wants to get go again or additional power or to draw a card. Enlightened Strike is really, really good because you're able to park it in an arsenal, and even if you full block out on a turn, you can still play Enlightened Strike from your arsenal and take that card from hand, put it to the bottom, and still come in for something like 7 damage. You know, that is really the sheer value of Enlightened Strike. It also allows you to continue to put on pressure even when your turn was just blocking. So Enlightened Strike's a great card, and it's a generic, so it can be put in any deck, any class, any talent. It can be put in there for you to play. Some don't really want this in there. For instance, like Mechanologist doesn't really care much for this card, but Brute cares a lot about this card. Guardian cares a lot about this card. Assassin cares a lot about this card. Ranger, not so much. So it's all based on how you want to go about doing it. And I think that it's going to be a very powerful addition to your deck if you can at least get 3 copies. If you can't get 3 copies, no worries. Getting 1 copy is totally fine. And the reason I say getting 1 copy is fine is because even with 1, your deck is going to be significantly more powerful than it was previously without any of them. So speaking of that, let's take a look at the next 2 cards that I would say if you can spend any of your money on these cards, you should spend it on these next 2. One of them being Command and Conquer. Now, hear me out, okay? I know I said this was for budget players and for new players, you know, willing to spend only a little bit here and there. But what I'm saying is that, yes, you can get a bunch of those budget Majestics and budget Legendaries for a fraction of the cost of Command and Conquer. But the dividends that Command and Conquer gives you as a player is insane. It's insane. Because this card, even if you buy 1 of them, again, it increases the overall power of your deck just by having 1 of them in there. And more specifically, if you're able to get them at, $100 a piece is a lot, all right? $300 for 3 cards is a lot. And it's probably going to be like $330 after taxes and everything for these cards. But the important part about Command and Conquer is that this is $330 that you will never have to invest into Flesh and Blood ever again. Ever again. You don't have to worry about whenever you want to build a new hero. If that hero needs 3 copies of Command and Conquer, you've already got them. If you're playing a hero that doesn't need Command and Conquer, then that's totally fine. You can just wait until another hero comes around and you'll already have your 3 copies of Command and Conquer. Command and Conquer being a generic and have never been banned, it is going to be incredibly valuable to get these cards. And just, even if you're able to get one, you're able to go ahead and pass that through the different decks that you want to try. And you know that you'll at least have a powerful card, a powerful turn with something like Command and Conquer. So again, it's $100 for 1 card. So you can buy 2, maybe even 3 legendaries and probably like 50 plus majestic cards for the price of 1 of these Command and Conquers. So it's entirely up to you. But I do suggest that if you're getting into the game, this is one of those things that you should absolutely take a look into. And if it's the only cards you buy and the rest of your cards are bulk that you got from your local game store, it's going to be a huge, huge boost to the power of your deck. And another huge boost to the power of your deck, and I'm sure those of you who are veterans in the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This next one, Fyendal's Spring Tunic. Now, this card, believe it or not, was $70 at the end of last year. It was $70 because it came out as a reprint in Bright Lights. You'll see that this card has gotten several printings. Now, these 2 don't really matter because these are prizes given out for like the early days of Flesh and Blood. Very rare to find. Incredibly, obviously, this one being $6,000. This one, they're near impossible to find. But these 4 here, it's been reprinted 4 times. Fyendal Spring Tunic has 4 times it's been printed. And with those 4 printings, you have still above $100 for this card. And the reason being is because this card, by and large, is one of the best legendaries to ever get for your Flesh and Blood journey. No matter what hero you're playing, you can probably play Fyendal's Tunic in it. You can probably boost your game's value by tenfold if you're playing something like Fyendal's Spring Tunic. It's just incredible value for what it's worth. And again, it's a card where this, you only need to buy 1 of them. You know, Command and Conquer, you needed to buy 3 to get a full play set, but this, you only need to buy 1. And you can buy any version of them. It doesn't matter. But these ones are going to be non-foil. There is a chance, these are going to be non-foil as well. But these 2, you could get this one in foil or non-foil, and this one comes in foil or cold foil. But even the rainbow foil from Welcome to Wraith Unlimited for $190, pretty good. But this is where most of the money comes from these decks, is a Fyendal Spring Tunic. It is nearly $150 to $200 for a copy of a Fyendal Spring Tunic. But again, this is a card you will never need to invest into the game ever again. And that is the true meaning of it. $200 can be passed between deck and deck and deck and all these different decks throughout your course of playing Flesh and Blood. If you're new to the game and you don't feel comfortable investing in this game yet because you're not sure if you like it, don't buy a Fyendal Spring Tunic. Don't buy Command and Conquers. Don't buy any of that. Instead, just continue to focus on purchasing those very cheap Majestics, or even just buying an Armory deck and slowly upgrading that. That's going to be your best bet for, getting your money's worth out of Flesh and Blood. Because at the end of the day, there's so many different classes and talents and heroes and stuff in the game that, I don't want to overwhelm anybody in regards to how much there is to do. But I do know that when it comes to purchasing, even in 2024, that even back in 2022, I was talking about the expense levels of Flesh and Blood, and I believe I made another one in 2023. So while this is still a buyer's guide for Flesh and Blood singles, it is still really important that if you save up for the entirety of the year for even one Findel Spring Tunic, it's going to go really well for you. You're going to see a lot of value in your game plan. And sure, there are other cards that you can still buy to be in that chest slot that will provide you value, right? Overall, it's just that the Findel Spring Tunic being generic, it means that you don't have to worry that when you go, let's say you decide that when Necromancer comes out, you're not going to have anything for Necromancer because all the stuff for Necromancer is going to be in one set. When that happens, you're going to go, dang, I wish I had some cards already to put into my Necromancer deck so that I could proceed to at least have some power going into it. So when a new class comes out or a new talent comes out, you can go, cool, Findel Spring Tunic and 3 Command and Conquers makes up $400 to $500 of that deck price that you would normally see on a winning deck. So if a deck comes out to be $1,000 that won the most recent Pro Tour, 500 of those dollars is probably in these 4 cards, and the rest is in other niche legendaries and majestics that are just really hot right now. So buy cards during off seasons in which people are trying to sell. When certain heroes are not doing very well in the meta, you can kind of just take a look at the heroes in the top 8 of the most recent event, and then just don't buy any cards for those heroes. You can instead find the ones for the heroes that are out currently that don't have a lot of value, and you can just pick up foil versions of them for incredibly cheap and increase your overall collection tenfold. So it's going to be really, really nice to get into that, and I hope that this guide helps a little bit. I know it doesn't sound very smart budget fun thing wise in regards to being like, yeah, just buy a $200 card, go buy $300 of cards, and it's only like 3 cards out of your 80. But it's really important to your overall investment into Flesh and Blood that you get these cards. If you don't feel like investing in Flesh and Blood, don't worry about those other ones, right? You can do fine with the Majestics and the Legendaries that are cheap right now, and you can just slowly but surely upgrade your current Armory deck, or maybe a budget deck that you and a couple buddies built with just some rares and commons. You can slowly upgrade that there too. It doesn't have to be a $1,000 deck for you to win an Armory. It doesn't have to be a $200 deck for you to win an Armory. But what's more important here is that everybody is aware of the pricing and why certain cards are as powerful and as expensive as they are shown to be. Now, with the addition of gem packs soon to come out at the Armory level, you might be seeing some very relevant reprints of some of the cards I had explained, such as Command and Conquer or Findel Spring Tunic or any of those things in those packs. That's not a guarantee, but we know that there are relevant reprints that are due to come out in those gem packs. So even if you just go to your Armory with your $10 deck and you're able to play and get a gem pack, that gem pack might include one of these cards that I had said here. But we don't know until the future happens, until we get to see what's within the set. And at this point, it's just better that if you're trying to become competitive in this new card game for yourself, that you take a moment to realize how powerful these cards are, why they're this powerful, and how they best benefit yourself by getting them early instead of just trying to figure other things out. But if it's the last thing you purchase out of your entire deck, that's totally fine. Again, these cards are expensive, and I know a lot of people don't have access to money, and including myself. I was very lucky to get the cards at the rate that I did when I did, but that was just me being kind of I was very sensitive to the market, and I went, well, I wanted to play the game at the best level I could. I bought all of my CNCs and my E-Strikes and Art of Wars in German, and then and I was able to buy all of 9 copies of those cards for $300 back in the day, and I bought my Tunic for like $100 back in the day as well. I think it was actually like 85, 90 or something, and I was able to get a Tunic then. And I've been using it ever since, right? It's money I spent then being incredibly hardcore invested into the game. And I've utilized those cards since I've gotten them. So it's shaved off hundreds of dollars into me wanting to try out a new deck or a new hero simply because I have these 4 cards. And even with the E-Strikes, that's $150 more now. And I bought them incredibly cheap then. So that's another $150 shaved off a deck that I don't have to worry about either if I'm playing them too. So hopefully this was insightful, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode where we kind of talk about some singles, buying guides and things like that. And let me know in the comments if you have any other buying strategies for the holiday season. Do you just like looking at those Majestics and those legendaries that are super cheap? Or do you prefer to pick up really high-level cold foils during this time simply because you'll expect to get some kind of store credit back for them? I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. And while you're down there, make sure to go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel as well if you have not already. And if you want to support us even further, you can do so by becoming a channel member. Channel members get access to our podcast, The Common Language, earlier than everyone else does. And you get access to loyalty badges, emotes when I'm live, all that stuff. And then you also get access to our future channel member giveaways, which I hope to do at least once a month, but we will see where that happens. So thank you all so much for joining. I do really, really appreciate your support, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. I hope you continue to have fun in the flesh and blood, and I will see all of you beautiful Ashwings in our next video.